The award-winning and highly respected Culinary Arts program at Joliet Junior College provides world-class learning and hands-on experience that cover all aspects of the culinary industry. Accredited by the American Culinary Federation Education Foundation, JJC's Culinary Arts program provides training for future chefs, pastry chefs, bakers, caterers, restaurant and food service managers, and entrepreneurs. Students learn by working on the latest equipment in state-of-the-art facilities that were built in 2017. JJC's City Center campus features 2 fully functional student-run restaurants that provide students with the ultimate in both back-of-house and front-of-house learning experiences. The Culinary Arts faculty is composed of full-time, multi-certified culinary and hospitality industry instructors with a combined total of over 140 years of industry experience. JJC currently offers an associate degree in culinary arts and 3 baking and pastry arts certificates. Students pursuing a certificate or degree in the Culinary Arts program will learn the relevant skills needed to eventually become a supervisor, manager, or business owner in the culinary and hospitality industry. Visit jjc.edu/journey for more information.
Good morning and welcome to Joliet Junior College. I am Chef Ken Thompson, culinary instructor here at the college. I'm joined today with my son and one of our students. And today we're going to make red beans and rice. We're going to make some cornbread, and we're also going to make a Cajun seasoning. And periodically throughout the day I'm going to talk about the college and what we do here. But we're going to go ahead and get started. So what Jake's going to do is Jake's going to stand over here and our recipe today is red beans and rice stew. So traditionally what happens is the red beans and rice, or red beans would soak overnight because they take a good bit of time in order to soften. So it doesn't have to soak overnight, but it certainly speeds up the process. So what we're going to do is I'm going to add to the pan some canola oil, or some neutral oil. And here we have some andouille sausage. Andouille sausage is readily available at most supermarkets. I got this, I've purchased it at Fort Myers and Jewel, but it's a Cajun pork style sausage, so it's a little bit spicy. So what Jake's going to do, he's going to add that to the pot, and he's going to render it or brown it. So we want to make sure it's a little bit brown and crispy. And at this point we're going to turn up the burner a little bit. And while that's happening, because really what we're trying to do at this stage is we want to make sure that the sausage gets brown and crispy, starts to cook out some of that fat, and then the fat that's in the pan is going to help us cook the vegetables for the rest of our soup. So while Jake is cooking the andouille sausage, I'm going to go ahead and put together a basic cornbread recipe. So I spent a lot of my time, my professional time in the industry. While I was born in Michigan, I spent the most of my professional time in the South. So I spent 6 years in Atlanta, Georgia, and I spent, prior to coming to Joliet Junior College, I spent 12 years in Memphis, Tennessee. So I spent a lot of time in the South and dedicated to Southern cooking. So that's definitely my love of food as well. So basic cornbread, I have some, the first thing I've done is I took a 8-inch cast iron pan, I put it into an oven, I made sure it was seasoned properly, which means that I've taken some salt, some fat, I put it into the oven and I let that roast or cook for about an hour. I want to make sure that that gets nice and clean and scraped out, there's no particles in there. And the cooking of the pan and the oiling helps season the process. So when it goes time to dump out our cornbread out of the cast iron pan, what we're going to have is a really nice crispy brown outside to the cornbread. So you have this really nice moist inside and nice crispy brown outside. So my first sets of ingredients are I have yellow cornmeal. I have some all-purpose flour, and it's 1 cup of each. I have 2/3 of a cup of sugar. I have 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I have 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. And I'm going to take all of those things, I'm going to mix it together just to fully incorporate everything. So here I have my prepared mixture of cornmeal, sugar, and flour, baking powder or baking soda, and salt. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put into a separate bowl some buttermilk, and let's go ahead and stir the andouille sausage again. So here's my buttermilk, and ideally what you'd have when you can find it is if you can get full fat buttermilk, there is no substitute for that. So the more fat we can get in there, the better. And would you check that butter in the back of the stove for me? Thank you so much. I'm also going to add to that some sour cream. And 2 eggs. And would you set this back there for me on the Juco tray? Thank you so much. So we're going to take all of that and we're going to mix it together. So we've combined all of our wet ingredients. I'm going to incorporate my wet to my dry ingredients. And I'm going to hold on to this bowl for right now because in a minute I'm going to dump all this mixture into my hot cast iron pan. So here's my mixture. And my last ingredient is I'm going to add to this some melted butter. So I'm going to get behind you. We're going to add the melted butter to the cornbread mixture. Get rid of this. And I want to fully incorporate that melted butter into this cornbread mixture and make sure it's evenly distributed. So here's my cornbread mix. I'm going to have Jake add to that pan with the andouille sausage. If you were to look in the pan, the sausage is nice and crispy. So I have some celery, some bell peppers, some onions, and we're going to stir all that to coat it with the andouille sausage and the pork fat. And we're going to turn down the heat a little bit, and then once Jake coats that mixture of the celery, the peppers, and the onions in that fat, he's going to put a lid on the pot, and we're going to cook that until the vegetables are soft. So I'm going to wipe down my station. I'm going to pull out of my preheated oven at 350 degrees my hot cast iron pan. So this has been in the oven for about a half an hour. I want to make sure that the pan is very hot because what's going to happen is I'm going to take my, thank you so much. I'm going to take my my Crisco, my vegetable shortening, and I want to very evenly coat the bottom of this hot cast iron pan. It starts to melt, and I want a pretty decent amount of this fat. I know that when I was working in the South, that oftentimes what happens is you use some bacon grease in there as well. As a personal preference, I don't really care for the bacon grease because then it makes everything taste like bacon, which is definitely not bad, but I want my cornbread to taste like cornbread. So I'm going to take that greased cast iron pan. I'm going to pass this along to Jake, and I'm going to dump my cornbread mixture into this very hot cast iron pan. So you see that it starts to sizzle and becomes brown around the outside almost immediately. So I'm going to pass this bowl along to Jake. You want to be very careful as you transport this back to the oven because all parts of the pan get really hot. So you can start to see that it sizzles around the outside. That makes it really nice and crispy, so I have a nice brown edge when it's done. So this goes back into an oven. And I'm going to set a timer for, I'm going to have Jake set a timer for 23 minutes or 25 minutes. At that point, we're going to check it. And I'm going to check it by two different methods. Oftentimes what I'll do is I'll take a toothpick and insert it into the middle and pull it out. After I pull out the toothpick, it should come out clean. The other method, what I usually do when I'm at home, is I'm going to take my hand and I'm going to touch the top of it. It should feel like soft and bounce back fully. It should not feel like there's any sort of liquid underneath that. So we're going to look at what Jake has here underneath this pot. So here's a towel. We're going to continue to stir that. I'm going to reach right below you. So part of traditions in the South is this notion of red beans and rice. So red beans and rice is definitely from the New Orleans, Mississippi, kind of Alabama area. Traditionally what they would do, after I did a little bit of research, is the red beans and rice would traditionally be served on a Monday. So what happens from a family perspective is that Sunday becomes family dinner. So everybody's there at the house and we have this big get together. And one of the ingredients that they would usually have for Sunday dinner would be some ham. So traditionally the ham would be served on the bone. And so in order to make sure that you use all parts of the product, you would take that ham bone that's left over and then you would use that ham bone to start to flavor your red beans. So it became a Monday tradition because throughout the week and into the weekend you would have a mountain of laundry left over. And so on Monday it was time to get back to work and do the laundry and make sure that everything is ready for the rest of the week. And so what they would do is they'd take these red beans and this ham bone and put it into a pot and then let that cook for a long period of time until the red beans start to soften and break up a little bit. The reason that becomes important is because laundry becomes more of a chore traditionally because they had to go through the wringers and the washers, and so it was a much longer process than it is today. And so the red beans and rice would just sit there on the stove and kind of simmer all day, so it didn't require a lot of maintenance. The other nice thing about the red beans and rice is it becomes a complete protein. So the beans and rice is not new to or wasn't developed specifically in the southern region. You also see that kind of throughout the world. You see like India has things like lentils and rice, which would be a bean and a rice. You also see in the Caribbean traditionally the black beans and rice. So it becomes a mixture of the rice and the beans develops or makes a complete protein. So it's, as far as nutrition goes, you're looking to supplement your diet, you have a complete protein. So what Jake is doing here is he has browned the meat, the andouille sausage. In the pot also the peppers and the onions and the celery are starting to soften, they brown a little bit. And the peppers, celery, and onions are staples in southern food. So they go in almost anything. So if you're looking for dirty rice or jambalaya, gumbo, traditionally all those three things would go in a lot of dishes. I think during my time in the South, I don't know how many countless pounds and tons of onions and celery and peppers that I cut, but it was substantial. So I spent a lot of time dicing celery, peppers, and onions. So the next thing Jake's going to do, because those vegetables are almost softened, is we're going to add to that pot some minced garlic. And so I am always a proponent of using fresh garlic. I know that you can buy the garlic that's already in the jar, it's packed in a little bit of oil, but that garlic doesn't seem to be, I don't know, it has kind of an off flavor sometimes, and it doesn't have the true full effect of having the fresh garlic. So we're going to add some garlic to the pot. We're also going to add to that pot at the same time some Cajun seasoning. I know that there's many brands of Cajun seasoning out there. Paul Prudhomme and some other chefs have their own brand of seasoning. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to make your own seasoning. And that's what I have today. I prefer to make my own because that way I have complete control over how much salt goes in there. And when you look at the other Cajun seasonings that are on the market, a lot of times you see there's a substantial quantity of salt. So I like to have control over everything. I think many chefs like to have a lot of control over what goes into their dishes. Don't get me wrong, I like salt. I think any of my former students would tell you that salt is definitely one of my favorite things. So we're going to add to that pan now the garlic. So Jake dumps all that garlic in there. We're going to take the Cajun seasoning and put it in there, and that's going to cook for about 1 minute. And what we're looking to do is we want to cook out the raw garlic, because as much as I love garlic, eating that much raw garlic in your finished dish is going to have one of two things. The first thing it's going to have is you're going to have that really raw garlic flavor. Or if it's not cooked enough and it sits in the dish for too long of a period of time, it develops kind of a sour flavor in the finished product, right? So we don't want to have that for our finished soup. So we're going to let that cook until the garlic is cooked. You can really smell it. And what's happening with the Cajun seasoning at this point, we're going to add a little more oil to the pan. What's happening in the pan with the Cajun seasoning is that it is toasting. So it's toasting those spices that have some oils in there, so it helps develop more flavor. So that's going to toast for a minute, and then Jake is going to add to that pot some long grain rice, a little bit of tomato paste, and some chopped tomatoes. What we've done for the chopped tomatoes is I purchased canned chopped tomatoes. You can certainly, during tomato season, peel and dice your own. So what I purchased of some petite or small diced canned tomatoes, I'm using the entire product. So I'm using the juice, the diced parts of the tomato. I just open up the can and really use the whole can. The other thing that we're going to add to the pot at the same time as we have the rice and the tomato paste and the tomatoes is a can of drained and rinsed red kidney beans. So I did research on the red beans that would traditionally be used. They're a little bit smaller than a chili bean, but they're going to look very similar in structure. And as far as ease of use for home, the best thing that I use is a Bush's bean. They really, I mean, that's what Bush's does. They make a really good bean. So they're pre-cooked. I have taken them, we took them out, drained them, rinsed them really well, and that's all going to go to the pot. So let's go ahead and add to that your rice, the tomatoes, our beans, and then the last component to this dish is we're going to add some hot chicken stock to it. So I'm going to get rid of all these components right here. Here's your towel back. So the hot chicken stock, Jake's going to take that and dump it into the pot. If and when you're using chicken broth, like at home, if I don't have chicken stock at the house that I have made myself, you have to be very careful about the chicken stock or chicken broth that you purchase, because oftentimes if you look at the back of the box or the can, when you look at it, the sodium or salt content is exceptionally high. So if you were to make this, I know at home one time I made a mistake and I purchased, without looking at it, some chicken stock, and I just forgot to purchase the one that was low sodium. So when I made my red beans and rice at home, it was very salty. So this is going to cook for approximately 20 minutes until the rice is softened. So what happens is this liquid is going to reduce down and concentrate. So with that concentrated liquid, it's going to be very salty in the end if you use full salt or regular chicken broth or chicken stock. The last couple of things that are going to go into our pot of red beans and rice is a little bit of Tabasco. So Jake's going to take about 1 teaspoon of Tabasco and put it in there. He's going to add some salt and black pepper to the pot. And we use our fingers and kosher salt to season things. So you'll see that anytime you see chefs, that we're constantly reaching in the salt bucket or the salt container to season our products. He's going to incorporate that into the soup, but we're going to let that simmer for about 20 minutes. While that's simmering, here are my ingredients for my Cajun seasoning. Obviously, to create a spice, we're going to use some ground cayenne pepper. We have some dried oregano. We have some dried thyme. Here's a little bit of salt. It's a small percentage, and it looks like a lot based on this when it goes into the bowl. But when we need to have the salt to add flavor to our dish. So we just want to be careful as we use this product that we don't over salt. Here's a little bit of cumin. We have gumbo filet, which is ground sassafras leaves. Granulated garlic. Some black pepper. Some chili powder. some paprika, some dried basil, and some white pepper. So Jake's going to help me tidy up these little spice containers that I had. And I'm going to, I've actually already put that one in there. So it looks like we doubled up on that one. So we're going to take the spice mixture, we're going to mix all this together. And this Cajun seasoning or Cajun spice does really well. It holds for a long time. So at home what I do is I make this quantity. This yields about 1 cup. And you can use this to make blackened fish or blackened steaks. You can add it as needed to other Cajun inspired recipes. And it has a very spicy smell to it. What I do at home is I keep it in a jar with a lid, and it seems to have a pretty long shelf life. I'll say at home that it doesn't usually stay that long because we end up making blackened or grilled chicken or fish, particularly during the summertime. So this soup just continues to simmer. I want to make sure it doesn't boil. So this continues to simmer. I stir, simmer, and stir, and then we're going to taste it periodically. What we're looking to have happen is we would like the rice to be fully cooked, and you can certainly add different kinds of rice to this. We've used a long grain white rice to this. I know at home we use a lot of brown rice. So if you use brown rice, you might want to decrease the quantity of the rice a little bit, or decrease the quantity of the rice a little bit, because what happens is it swells a little bit more and takes a little bit longer to cook than the white rice. So you want to make sure that you put that into your recipe as an addition and as a change. So that's just going to simmer. We're waiting for our cornbread to be done. I would say it's probably got about 10 more minutes. And then we're going to pop the cornbread out of the oven. We're going to cut that. And then we're going to taste our red beans and rice. So if you're interested in learning more about our culinary arts program, you can reach out to our department secretary, Deetra Randall, and she will email you back or call you back, and the information will be on the bottom of the screen. Also, don't forget to join us at our fully functioning restaurants. We have 2 restaurants that are open to the public on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I always encourage you to call ahead to make reservations because due to limited seating capacity, you want to make sure you have a reservation before you come in. The other thing is we're in downtown Joliet. We have 5 floors of culinary arts here. So we are fully hands-on. So if you're interested in seeing more about our program, please reach out to us. Our lab classes meet in small class sizes. So the student to instructor ratio is very small. So we have a full-time instructor in the labs with you, and a student assistant. So it's a very hands-on approach to learning. And we offer lots of support services while you're here at JGC. We have, what Jake and I did earlier this morning is we made a batch of this soup ahead of time. And what I found when I was making this soup is that I like all these components. So if you were to look at a traditional red beans and rice, what they would do is they would just be the beans, the ham bone, and they would take this and simmer this down for long periods of time until the beans start to explode or are a little bit soft, and it's just like porridge of beans. And you take a pot of rice and maybe you put the rice on top of the beans. For this, I really wanted to incorporate big chunks of things. So I like the andouille sausage in big chunks and the big chunks of vegetables. It helps add kind of a bite while you're eating it. So that's the reason I developed this recipe with larger pieces of things. The other thing is I've added to this in the past things like okra. Okra in the South, particularly during the summer season, really goes well. So what I would do is I'd take small pieces of okra, about 1-inch pieces. I would cut them up and then fold them into the soup. And if you're using okra, I would put that in about the same time you're putting your tomatoes and your beans in. They take about 20 minutes, 25 minutes to simmer. And you want to make sure for the okra it is very soft and it's going to look kind of like an army green. It needs to be really soft. It shouldn't be like a nice vibrant bright green. I know when I went to the South the first time, I started making this okra, and they looked at me and they're like, that's like crispy, that's not so good. So you really want to make sure that you take your time and simmer that okra down until it's very soft. It has a really nice flavor to add to this dish as well, and extra texture. So I'm going to check my cornbread. So as far as today, we have our TV Magic cornbread. So I have one pan of cornbread in the oven, and I made one pan of cornbread ahead of time. So would you grab me one of those cutting boards? And we're going to go ahead and plate up what we have. The Cajun seasoning I'm going to set aside and put into a small glass jar later on. So my cornbread is hot. This pan, I only had one of the 8-inch skillets, so today this is a 10-inch. It's the same process though. I know personally I really like the crispy cornbread, so by using a 10-inch instead of an 8-inch pan, it makes it a little bit flatter, and it ends up with a crispy product, so you end up with really nice crispy cornbread on the outside, and really soft on the inside. So I'm going to take this, and hopefully it comes right out of the pan. Take this and flip this over. And there we have it. So we have this nice crispy brown edge. And I'm going to take and make wedges out of this. So here's our really nice fluffy yellow cornbread. And personally, I'll eat this with the red beans and rice. And then maybe as a dessert, I take more cornbread and then more butter. And then I take some honey or maple syrup and drizzle that over top, and that becomes dessert. So the cornbread is like definitely part of the star of the show. So there's my cornbread. And then our red bean and rice stew, or our finished soup, Jake's gonna haul over here for me. And you notice that this is a slightly smaller pot, but same process. Thank you. Here's our finished red bean and rice soup. So you can see all the big chunks of sausage and the cooked rice and the beans that are in there. So I'm going to ladle some of this into the bowl. Put my cornbread on the side. Here's a spoon, and it looks like we're going to have lunch. So that's my version of red beans and rice today. I really appreciate your time watching our demo of cornbread and red beans and rice soup. If you wanted to make a thicker version of this, what you would do is double the quantity of rice, and then you end up with more of a stew because that rice really swells. And a cautionary note on that one, if you do double the rice, what happens is it sits overnight, is that rice really swells, and you end up with like a really hearty red bean and rice stew. So just be careful as you increase the quantity of the rice. So thank you again very much for your time. If you're ever interested in joining Culinary Arts, or if you just want some more information, or you know somebody that would like to come out and visit us, by all means, reach out to us. We'd be happy to see you here. Thank you, Jake, for your help today. I appreciate it. And we're going to go have some red beans and rice for lunch. So have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you at JGC soon.